the yes, I am the savage. I got 'em mad after the bag.
Alright. Hey, what's up everyone? This is Dante's Analysis and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm actually going to be doing something a little different. So this is actually going to be a video from HipHop Madness, and this video is on Logic and an example of how to kill a rap career. I'm definitely a big fan of Logic. I feel like the mistake he did was announcing his retirement and a few months later getting back into doing music, because I really do feel like that really did mess up he kind of sabotaged his own career in that way, because I already know he was going through like personal issues in his life and like depression, and also the whole situation with Joe Budden and how he was like the worst rapper to ever grace a mic, and that how it really affected his mental health and like his mental stability. And yeah, and how it kind of made him rethink his whole rap career, decided to retire because he has a kid now, but now he decided to get back into music. And I feel like it kind of did reflect his music after he came out of retirement, because it hasn't really been selling that great. But yeah, but I'm just gonna get into this video and just see what HipHop Madness is talking about.
This video is brought to you by Raycon. Stay tuned to find out more.
Logic.
Also, before I get into this, I do not own any content of this video. I'm just simply reacting to a video by HipHop Madness. He owns all the content in this video, so just want to put it out there.
You are easily one of the worst rappers to ever grace a microphone. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what they telling you, man. I know you sold a lot of records. I know you sell out a whole bunch of tours, and I know just how successful you are. I have to be honest. You are horrible, man.
I think he's a rap, but I feel like he just tries to prove that he's black too much.
Logic and Jordan
At almost every turn, Logic has found himself as the butt of a cultural joke. Ridiculed for everything from his insistence on discussing his biraciality to his willingness to present himself as an open book to an inherently cynical audience, Logic has been written off by no shortage of fans over the years. But even as the world took from him with one hand, it gave with the other. Through it all, he's retained a passionate fan base that basically ensured that every time that he dropped a record, it skyrocketed to the top of the charts. Or at least that was the case until very recently, when, after years of weathering PR disasters and public slights from others, Logic's stock appeared to take a noticeable drop. But before we get there, we need to look at when Logic's path through hip-hop began to veer off the norm. When he first came out of the gate, the MC was, for all...
Yeah, and... yeah, I'm pretty sure he's gonna go through the whole, like, career of how Logic became who he was and how he became popular, and also his steady decline. Man, nope. Oof, man.
All intents and purposes, a traditional MC. And on his debut album, Under Pressure, he adhered to his...
I don't care what anyone says, this is a fucking classic album. Under Pressure by Logic, a classic.
Many of the genre's origin story tropes as he could. As he later admitted to The Fader, the project was a case of looking at his perception of himself and wanting them, being the hip-hop buying audience, to like me. Claiming that he'd been through things that can give me credibility, he initially decided to spotlight his rough upbringing. But over time, he decided to deviate from that in order to present a more robust picture of who he really is. When I let all that go and I was like, I'm an anime nerd, a sci-fi loving, film going mother, that completely changed how open I was. The result of this would be his sophomore album, the highly concept...
Also another great album, The Incredible True Story. I love this album from beginning to end.
The Incredible True Story. And from there, Logic had already begun to garner sideways looks from a genre which, often to its detriment, expects its mainstream artists to follow the template to the letter. However, it should be said that the warping of his public image didn't really result from this sci-fi oriented project. In fact, the anti-Logic movement, which soon became rife in hip-hop, didn't really pick up steam until 2017's Everybody. At which point, all of the niggling hang-ups that people seemed to nurture about him all came to a head in a way that would lead to that credibility he'd spoken of taking irreparable damage. For starters, attentive listeners began to see some glaring similarities in his rapping, flow, and lyrics to that of other artists. In the eyes of his defenders, Logic was simply interweaving aspects of other work into his own creative output in a way that mirrors his hero, film director Quentin Tarantino. But to others, what Logic engaged in was nothing short of
Yeah, that's another thing. When Logic was coming up in his career, he faced a lot of backlash, mostly due to his whole him talking about his biracial um, background and how people thought that was a little like too much, too corny. But me personally, I did like it, but I felt like there were times he was kind of overdoing it. It was cool here and there, but I feel like if you keep talking about it all the time, then it's kind of getting a little bit. We're kind of getting force fed it. So I do understand how some people don't agree with it, but for attacking the dude because of that, that's a little wild.
Blatant plagiarism. As while recreating shots to salute the movies that paved the way for your own distinct filmmaking is one thing, having the audacity to routinely steal elements from another artist's music or imagery within a culture that views biting as a cardinal sin is something else entirely. Over the years, the damning evidence began to mount up and would lead to videos such as Logic copying Kendrick Lamar for 5 minutes straight to be compiled. Likewise, he was accused of copying both contemporaries such as J. Cole and legends like Eminem. Elsewhere, the voice of Talia, which originated on The Incredible True Story and later provided context for songs on No Pressure, bears startling resemblance to that which can be heard throughout A Tribe Called Quest's Midnight Marauders. But if there was any issue in regards to Logic...
I actually didn't know about that. See, this is why I like HipHop Madness. He does his research when it comes to artists. I actually didn't know about that.
Apparently taking inspiration too far, it was his apparent theft of Joyner Lucas's
Oh yeah, I remember this whole situation with him and Joyner with the whole like when Logic released that the suicide prevention song, and how Joyner Lucas thought it was a ripoff of his song that was gonna be something similar to that, kind of like a Hotline type of song. And yeah, that whole situation kind of went left. But I'm glad that they both are on. They kind of repaired that relationship.
Concept that eventually lead to his biggest hit ever, the mental health awareness anthem 1-800-273-8255. As Joyner Lucas said, this wasn't a case of coincidence, as Logic's manager had essentially acted as a spy and gave the idea directly to Logic after hearing what Joyner had been cooking up. Are you ready to hear things in a whole new way? Whether you're listening to your favorite podcast or playlist while working out, Raycon earbuds have you covered.
Great. His manager says, yo, I'd like to get maybe you and Logic together. And I'm like, yo, that's cool. Whatever. A couple weeks go by, all of a sudden there's a record out. The number 1-800 blah, blah, blah. Now I feel saucy as You was so hyped about my album title being a phone number. Next thing you know, Logic's 1-800 song is a phone number. It's a song at that.
Just one of many accusations, the notion that Logic was creatively light-fingered became a meme. In one of the more comical claims, Freddie Gibbs saw their parallel uses of religious iconography on the album covers for You Only Live Twice, and everybody has enough for him to tweet. That white boy took that. While the accusation itself is definitely a stretch, the fact that Freddie felt sufficiently emboldened to go and demand an explanation from the white boy raises a larger question about Logic's place in the culture. Essentially, due to his persona, Logic had become a punching bag who could be offhandedly disrespected without fear of consequence.
Yeah.
And in an industry that's fueled by machismo and asserting dominance, this might as well be fatal. In many ways, it was this perception of Logic that likely gave Joey Badass the green light to lie about being blinded by a solar eclipse to get out of his commitments to tour with him. I just really wanted an excuse to be off the Logic tour, Joey later revealed. Blogs literally created a story and I went with it because it was convenient for me at the time. Although he wasn't short on haters, Logic's positive impact can't be discredited. And over time, it was revealed that 1-800 had led to a massive increase in calls to the prevention hotline. But even then, the massive mainstream appeal of the track and being dubbed the voice of a generation by Ellen DeGeneres of all people likely did more damage than good. The same fans who had heard 1-800 and been like, this is amazing, this is so special, this is needed, were now the ones saying, this sucks and he's too mainstream, he reflected in his autobiography. The most popular thing I'd ever done, the song that was going 7 times platinum, suddenly became the worst song Logic ever made. Suddenly faced with backlash from his own fans and the general disrespect of his people.
I could understand, because there are some people saying like, oh, like Logic sold out because he made a mainstream song, but he kind of went from the underground scene, and he kind of, because people always associate mainstream with like selling your soul. So I don't know what's the reason as to why Logic made that suicide prevention song. I'm pretty sure he did explain it, but But I'm pretty sure Def Jam was telling them like, hey, we need like a mainstream song, mainstream song to kind of hit, to be on something for radio. So
This was anything but ideal for someone who'd soon prove himself to be thin-skinned in a way that's simply not compatible with the intense criticism that comes with being an artist in hip-hop. Having shown that he could be willfully discredited and mocked in a way that other MCs can't, enabling this to fly with little more than the occasional gripe in an interview or a vague allusion to haters on wax has meant that this outlook on him has all but solidified over the years. And over time, he's found himself on the receiving end of some harsh words from some of the most barbed tongues in hip-hop.
Yo, he
Let me be the first to tell you, I don't know what the hell Logic is talking about. I can assure you that nobody in this room has ever said, man, you know who doesn't come up here? Logic. And that's not a diss. I'm just telling you, nobody cares.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know what they tell you, Def Jam. I know you sold a lot of records. I know you sell out a whole bunch of tours, and I know just how successful you are. I have to be honest. You are horrible, man.
While Budden and Charlemagne shooting off at the mouth is nothing new, the willingness to verbally tear Logic limb from limb speaks to his reputation as an easy target. And while it may seem like kicking a man while he's down, in the hyper-masculine realm of hip-hop, Logic really only has himself to blame. Because once you allow the opinions of others to permeate your mind and form a part of who you are, it'll then be visible to the culture at large. And if we know anything about human nature, really, it's that when people are given free rein to take liberties, they will. As he revealed during an interview.
Yeah, especially, because I think that's the thing with, especially with like music in general, especially in hip hop, you can't let things like get to you or get underneath your skin. Yeah, it's gonna like hurt, but you gotta learn how to roll with the punches. I feel like that's another thing. I mean, I have to keep it real. I love Logic, but I feel like he kind of took a lot of people's opinions to heart, and it really did affect him musically because he always kept on addressing it in his music, which is a good outlet. But I kind of feel like, alright, like you already said this before, like why are you bringing up the same situation again? So it's kind of like, yeah, you're kind of letting these people's opinions get the best of you and not just sticking to your original sound. So I do agree with that.
Interview with Rob Markman, this is precisely what happened in regards to Charlemagne's conduct towards him. Rather than letting it go, Logic allowed it to fester inside him and actively affect his life.
When he basically kind of called me homophobic without even watching an interview, and then for him to just out his mouth be like, it's your sister, like I actually held on to that for like 6 years, man. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this isn't healthy, and I'm talking to my therapist about it. It ain't that deep.
Unsurprisingly, this same pattern of internalizing insults came into play when Joe Budden decided to level his scathing critiques in Bobby's direction. On that occasion, it even made such a dent in his confidence that it played a role in his decision to briefly retire from hip-hop.
I read this and my heart rate explodes, and I'm like, oh my God. And I go out and I'm at like the garden, and everyone's like rapping my lyrics and whatever, and I'm like, I'm a failure. What I'm saying is, at that moment, it was the height of me caring about what other people say. It was the height of people's opinions on me bearing deep into my heart and affecting my everyday life. And after that, I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Known to have an extremely strained relationship with social media to the extent that he believes the internet was actually a much nicer place just a decade ago, Logic would announce his retirement from the game, signing off with July 2020's No Pressure. Seen by many as a triumphant swan song, the No ID aided project shifted an emphatic 221,000 unit and was only kept from the top spot by Taylor Swift. Rounded off with a leap into the streaming world, Logic had suddenly cultivated more goodwill than he'd gotten from the industry in years. In fact, for the first time in a long time, it felt like he'd been able to escape with his head held high as he rode off into the sunset to go and be a father. And with that, Logic's legacy began to be seen with a greater level of goodwill than had been given in years. Until, less than a year on from his final album, he announced that he was returning to the game that he'd once claimed had driven him to the brink of a breakdown. In one Michael Jordan impersonating press release, Logic sacrificed the perfect storybook ending that he'd written for himself, and in doing so, opened himself up to the usual criticism once again. To make matters worse, he also began to discuss his past, most hated projects, and the questionable intentions behind them. No, but the funny thing is, people didn't realize it was a satirical social experiment, LOL. He said of the widely hated Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, "I win, and to this day the numbers show it is my most popular album, proving my point. Make a controversial album and people talk." I've never actually admitted this. Almost immediately, Logic's comments about his 5th record were contested by fans and critics alike, with some feeling angered by the fact that some of the tracks that they felt connected to were now being invalidated by the artist behind them. Meanwhile, others saw it as nothing more than a case of trying to salvage the project's dubious reputation, with one Twitter user tweeting, "So how do you explain Bobby Tarantino 3 being mid then? Is that another satirical social experiment?" Combined with the decision to end his retirement in under a year, Logic's comments set the precedent that fans could no longer take anything that he says at face value. And considering that No Pressure was billed as his final contribution to the culture of hip-hop, it can be hard to view any future albums with anything approaching the same degree of anticipation, when it's likely that he'll drop another one within months. Sure enough, this predicament was epitomized by his 30-track strong comeback record, Vinyl Days. Praised by longtime Logic critic Anthony Fantano, the record was actually regarded by many as a phenomenal return to his roots, which saw his strengths as an MC and a producer come to the fore. But in the wake of his retirement, Logic essentially killed off his momentum. As a result, his commercial appeal experienced a massive nosedive.
Yeah, that's the one thing I definitely agree with. Him announcing his retirement and a whole year without him releasing anything, and suddenly coming back into the music industry, that definitely killed his momentum, and definitely it severely hurt his chance to have another mainstream hit. So Logic, he definitely did that to himself, but can't blame anyone but himself.
As while his retirement album sold over 200,000 first week, Vinyl Days shifted just 28,000, garnering numbers which placed him below that of Kevin Gates' Kaza, which was released the same week. While this next phase of his career will see him operating under the BMG imprint on a deal that likely made him a fortune, there's no denying that Logic has lost something which he simply can't regain. Once he renounced his place in the game at what had seemed like the perfect time, Logic's last-ditch effort to salvage his reputation and part ways on good terms became a relic of the past. Instead, he finds himself painted into a corner that was partially constructed by the perceptions of others, but that he also had an undeniable hand in crafting for himself, as through his own mismanagement of his career and his ill-fitting coping strategies to deal with things beyond his control, he faces an uphill battle if he ever hopes to clamber back to the highest heights of his early years with this new post-retirement career, and perhaps more pressingly, get the respect that he feels he deserves.
Alrighty, so that was the HipHop Madness video on Logic, an example of how to kill a rap career. And yeah, I definitely do appreciate HipHop Madness for doing some extensive research on Logic, like his highs and his lows, and how he killed his own momentum in the rap game. And yeah, I really do agree with this. Even as a fan of Logic, I do agree with what he had to say in the video. Logic, I like the man. He's a great MC. He knows how to rap, but I feel like he's kind of one of those people that gets himself in his own way. I mean, he kind of gets in his own way because he kind of just lets things fester and build up inside of him that it affects his everyday life. And he actually did admit it, that other people's opinions on his about him affected his everyday life, and how it eventually led up to him retiring. And which he could have done was use that as fuel to prove to those people that, hey, you may think I'm this and that, but I'm actually going to take that energy and put it into a better project that I'm going to release to you guys and show you that, hey, I still got it. I'm not like what you guys say on social media. But Elijah took it the opposite way, and it definitely stunted his momentum. Will he ever regain it? I don't know. If I'm going to be straight, maybe not. I feel like he's going to be in a corner where he's living comfortably in his life, and I feel like as long as I think with Logic, he's going to be in that situation where he's going to have to tour to make money, which he's touring now. and I know he has like a deal with Twitch now, so he has other streams of income. So, and I know he writes books. I think he does something else, but at least he has other avenues to make income. So at least that's great. But yeah, man, I definitely enjoyed this video, and yeah, that's basically it. And thank you everyone for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.